mic on?
Yeah, it's on.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Not with tennis shoes?
Yeah, they're nice.
The Great Depression was in the 1920s to mid-1930s, and was the first time America had its economy fall to pieces. The stock market was something that most everyone had invested in, but once everyone had all the appliances they needed, such as cars and dishwashers, and I don't know if those were around, but you know, no one needed to buy them anymore. So companies started to plummet in money. This caused not only the companies to crash and burn, but also those who invested in it, which was the vast majority of the community at the time. People were out several $100s, which was a lot in that time, and they couldn't get it back. The banks ran out of money because people were taking everything out of their bank accounts, my bad. People were getting laid off, and were unable to find new work because companies were dissolving and, making large budget cuts, which means less jobs. And to top off this disaster, the immigrants were coming in from everywhere, like every part of the world, even China. And they were, still floating in from the Gilded Age, looking to start a better work and life.
As broad as this sounds, they were virtually coming from just about any country that spoke a language, and yes, that's very generic, but they were coming in from Europe, Asia, and occasionally Southern Africa, Northern Africa, and China had a lot of immigrants coming from there. And now Chinese, they were eventually put a restriction on them, and that was about later 1800s, and that went all the way through and didn't get revoked until the 1940s, so that stayed around for a while. So not as many Chinese immigrants were coming through in the 1920s and 30s, but majority of the people coming through were Irish and Northern and Southern Europeans.
The Immigration Acts of 1917 was put into place to harshly restrict the amount of immigrants that were flooding into America, mostly from around Asia. This act prohibited certain people from being able to enter America. This included people with diseases, sicknesses, handicaps, both mentally and physically, alcoholics, beggars, criminals, and classified idiots. They would also have to pay fees of $8 if they were over the age of 16, and if you were under, you could enter for free with parental supervision. There were tests that were also had to be taken. You had to read around 30 to 40 words to prove that you would be able to read and you could be useful to America. And if you were trying to get to America because of religious persecution, you could be exempt from taking the readings and tests, and possibly even the fee. The places where these immigrants typically would go to see if they would enter the United States was either Ellis Island or Angel Island. If an immigrant was sent to Ellis Island, it usually meant that they had something wrong with their paperwork or were war refugees of some sort. Those who were sent to Angel Island, for the most part, did not spend much time there until they were sent into San Francisco. Most all the immigrants who were sent through Angel Island made it to the United States, though not all did, in fact, make it through. Many Chinese people who were trying to come to America would do so from the western parts of the United States, but the Chinese Exclusion Act prohibited any of them to enter the U.S. The Immigration Act of 1924 limited the annual number of immigrants who could be admitted from any country to 2% of the number of people from that country who were already living in the United States in the year 1819. The Naturalization Act of 1906 started that in order to become a naturalized citizen of the United States, you must first learn how to read and write in the English language.
Lillian Wald was a Jewish girl who was born to a wealthy family and dedicated her life to helping others. She was a hard-working woman who pushed for social reform and international human rights. She was also the founder of the Henry Street Settlement. The Henry Street Settlement is still around today and is located in New York. It was then and still a nonprofit organization that offers help to people who need it. In the 20s and 30s, that would be most of America at the time, and America was flooding with new immigrants who couldn't get a start in the failing economy. America at the time was starting to put out laws and enact that were practicing eugenics. Eugenics was basically that the attempt to create superior people by picking desirable traits and outcast undesirable traits. The most famous man to ever put practice in eugenics was none other than Hitler. His whole plan was eugenics, killing those the undesirable traits. Madison Grant and Charles Davenport both played important roles in the making of the laws that prohibited certain people with defects to enter America, which greatly slimmed the amount of immigrants.
Many of these immigrants faced a lot of hardships when they came to America. They were not particularly liked by all of the native-born Americans, and because of that they didn't get as many jobs, and the living conditions for many of these immigrants were not all that great. Many of them moved into very poverty-stricken neighborhoods where the living conditions again were very harsh. They moved into buildings that were very run down and most of the time really sketchy and falling apart. They were called tenements. Now tenements were obviously not very good to live in. They were normally 1 or 2 bedroom buildings, and you'd have families as big as 8 or 9 people living in them. One room would normally be used for a kitchen, while the other would be used for bedding and living in. The most immigrants would have work being done out of these tenements, and they would have sewing or making clothes or whatever. They had a small side job just to bring in a better income. Now, a lot of these people were happy because they were better living conditions than what they would have ever had back in their home country, but they were still nothing to be too proud of. Many immigrants that came to the U.S. had very similar talents depending on what their jobs were, and then there were others that had very unique skills. And throughout the time of people coming in, America had many jobs that were opening needing these different skills. Now, if you had a skill that was very, very helpful for getting you a job, skilled versus unskilled laborers, skilled versus unskilled laborers was very common throughout the 1900s, and still today is a big problem. Many people who have skills find jobs easier, and this just implies that they have a specific need that the job or owner of the business is needing done, whether it be they knew how to sew or they knew how to work machinery. And that was very, very common throughout the 1900s as people and work became more machine-based, where you needed to learn how to work certain machines. Now, unskilled laborers was a whole other story, and they always found it harder to find a job, whereas they would normally be the ones who had no background history of a previous job, and they were normally the ones who spent a lot more time looking for a job during the Depression. Oh gosh.
Had to grab my pants. The Great Depression was in the 1920s to mid-1930s. And was the first time that America his mustache fell off. Was born into a wealthy family and dedicated her life to helping others. She was a hardworking woman who pushed for social reform and international human witnesses. And she also was the founder.
Stop! It's rights, not witnesses. That's right.
I thought it said witnesses.
International human witnesses.
No.
They were mainly from Europe, Asia, and occasionally Africa, but not many Africans were coming over.
Is it because Leo? You just can't say just skip Africa. All right. No one